Peppa Pig may seem like just another ordinary children's cartoon, but did you know there are several hidden facts about this show that almost nobody knows? Greg Pig. Everyone knows that Peppa has two siblings, George and Evie, who was born in 2025. But what if we told you that she once had an older brother who passed away? Nobody knows what his name was, but let's call him Greg Pig, since it's a name similar to George's. We have a few reasons to believe that Peppa's deceased brother really existed at some point and probably lost his life before the little pig was even born. Have you noticed how overprotective Daddy Pig and Mummy Pig are of George in several episodes? When the boy catches a cold, they immediately call a doctor to check on him, even if he's only sneezing. It's not normal to call a doctor just because a child is feeling a little sick. It's almost as if George's parents have an unusually strong fear that some kind of tragedy might happen. Not to mention the way they treat George compared to Peppa, giving him an incredible birthday party at a museum, while the little pig received a much simpler birthday celebration at home. It seems like Peppa's parents value George a lot, perhaps because they once had a son named Greg Pig who passed away from an illness when he was still a baby. Since George is a boy and has a name that starts with the letter G, he reminds his parents of Greg. That's why they protect and spoil George much more than they do Peppa. Who would have guessed that such a sad tragedy may have happened in this family's past? And this is only the first of the 8 hidden facts you didn't know about Peppa Pig. So grab your popcorn and get comfy on the couch. Another Cinewave is starting. Peppa is to blame. One of the biggest revelations in Peppa Pig was that George is officially deaf. He can still hear, but he needs to use a hearing aid to hear properly. And discovering this was shocking even for Daddy Pig and Mummy Pig, because they had already taken George for a medical checkup before, and the results showed that the boy could hear just fine. The doctor explained that hearing loss can develop over time, especially since George is still very young, and they accepted that explanation. But what if the reason George became deaf has a name and surname, Peppa Pig? It may sound absurd, but when you really think about it, the possibility starts to make some sense. Hearing loss can have many causes, including accidents. What if Peppa caused an accident that injured George's ears, leaving him deaf? These two have gotten into so many adventures throughout the series that it's easy to imagine something like that happening. But we think we know which episode may have contained the accident responsible for causing the little boy's hearing loss. The episode is called Snow, and in it, Peppa and George play together by throwing snowballs at each other. However, in the middle of the fun, Peppa goes too far and throws a gigantic snowball at her little brother, crushing him and making him burst into tears. That snowball definitely hurt George, but you're probably wondering how that could possibly make him deaf. And that's a fair question. The thing is, the hearing loss wasn't caused by the weight of the snowball itself, but by the snow. George must have been completely covered in snow at that moment. In other words, it's possible that some of that snow got into his ears. Any kind of debris could damage George's eardrums, especially freezing winter snow. Peppa certainly didn't know something like that could happen, and it's likely that neither she nor George realized that this accident may have been what caused his hearing loss. Miss Rabbit's house. There are many theories about Miss Rabbit, mainly because she draws attention by somehow managing to have more jobs than there are hours in a day, being an excellent employee at all of them, and still finding time to spend with her friends. It's no surprise that many fans think she's some kind of supernatural and sinister entity capable of controlling time. That would at least explain how she manages to be in multiple places at once. There are also people who believe that Miss Rabbit is recording the pig family's life and broadcasting everything on television, which would mean that the Peppa Pig series also exists within the cartoon's own universe. And this makes more sense than it seems, since the episode TV Land showed the little pig visiting the television studio where episodes of Super Potato Show were produced, and discovering that the producer of the series is none other than Miss Rabbit herself. As if that weren't already impressive enough, the episode ends with Peppa being filmed by the cameras and introducing herself in exactly the same way she does in the show's opening sequence, which is then broadcast on television. Many people believe that this episode is actually the first event in the show's timeline, and that from that point on, Miss Rabbit began recording the pig family's day-to-day life to air it on TV. Taking the theory even further, we think Miss Rabbit may actually live very close to Peppa's house, so she can always stay nearby. Since she's a rabbit, she could even be living in a rabbit burrow on the same hill where the pig family home is located. After all, it has already been shown that Mummy Rabbit, along with her husband and children, lives inside rabbit burrows built into a hill, so this is completely possible. So, do you also believe that Miss Rabbit is hiding a very dark secret? If so, comment below, #Rabbit. Aunt Dottie the Fugitive. Remember Aunt Dottie? She hasn't appeared much in the show, but the episode where she meets Peppa is incredible. Dottie is one of Mummy Pig's sisters, who lives in another country and rarely visits her family in England. The series wants us to believe that Dottie barely appears because she lives outside of Europe, but there are details that suggest that Dottie is actually a fugitive criminal. Seriously, we're not joking. Peppa has already traveled to several countries with her parents without any problems at all. So why would Dottie only visit them once every several years? Maybe the problem isn't the distance or the cost of plane tickets, but the fact that Dottie is afraid of being tracked down by the English police. On top of that, there are clues suggesting that Dottie lives in the United States because of the lyrics of the song Pumpkin Pie, which plays in the Thanksgiving episode where Dottie made her first appearance. But that only makes everything even stranger, because there was an entire story arc where the Pig family traveled to the United States. Peppa visited several American cities with her parents and George, but at no point did they visit Dottie. Peppa's parents didn't even mention the idea, as if going to where Dottie lives wasn't even possible. That only makes sense if Dottie doesn't tell anyone where she lives specifically to avoid being found by the police. If all of this is true, what crime did Dottie commit to become a fugitive? Even we don't know the answer to that, but it must have been something serious that attracted media attention at the time. Our theory? Dottie probably robbed a bank or did something similar. Corrupt police officers. Still talking about crime, it's time to discuss Peppa Town's police officers, Police Officer Panda and Police Officer Squirrel, who appear in a few episodes. At first glance, they seem like two kind-hearted and somewhat naive law enforcement officers, but it looks like the series may also be hiding the fact that these two are actually corrupt cops. In other words, criminals. To this day, we've never seen this duo arrest a single criminal. However, that's not because Peppa Town is extremely safe and has a very low crime rate. We've already seen several criminals appear throughout the series and walk among the other characters as if they were ordinary civilians. One of them is Mr. Fox, Freddy Fox's father. He pretends to be an ordinary salesman, but several moments throughout the series suggest that he's actually a thief who steals anything he can find and then sells it as if it had always belonged to him. Seriously, there was even a time when Mr. Fox stole a market stall from Emily Elephant, a child. Even so, he was never arrested. And what's even more suspicious is that Police Officer Panda literally lives right next door to Mr. Fox, since they're apartment neighbors. This isn't just Panda being incompetent. It seems much more likely that Peppa Town's police officers turn a blind eye to Mr. Fox's crimes, ignoring him in exchange for bribes. Piracy. Another criminal who seems to enjoy special privileges is the pirate. Police Officer Panda and Police Officer Squirrel have actually hunted for pirates in certain episodes, but they've never managed to find a real one. Well, sort of, because they did come across a pirate once, but instead of arresting him, they believed his excuse that he was simply wearing a costume. Let's be honest, nobody could be that gullible and still pass the exams required to become a police officer. In other words, Panda and Squirrel were only pretending to be fooled because they already had an arrangement with the pirate to ignore his crimes in exchange for money. Speaking of which, have you noticed how common pirates are in the world of Peppa Pig? Characters talk about pirates in several episodes, children play pirate games, and on top of that, police officers actively search for pirates to arrest. In other words, within Peppa's world, piracy is extremely common, and the seas are full of pirates sailing around in ships searching for lost treasure and raiding other vessels. The subscribe button is right there, waiting for you. How about clicking and keeping up with everything we post? Penny Pony. Pedro Pony is the favorite character of many fans, but even those fans don't know this incredible piece of trivia about him. Originally, the character was supposed to be a girl instead of a boy, and would have been called Penny Pony instead of Pedro. When Peppa's pilot episode was created, the idea was still for Pedro to be Penny, and that only changed later on. What's funny is that Penny still exists in the Little Pig's world even after that change, since she was turned into a background character who appears in several episodes, becoming a completely separate character from Pedro, although some fans theorize that they are siblings, which could mean that Penny may one day become an important character in the show's story. Animals. There is no doubt that many animals appear in Peppa Pig. After all, every character represents some kind of animal species. The strange part is that, even though the Little Pig's world is populated by animals that talk and behave like humans, ordinary animals also exist in that same world. Like Polly, Grandpa Pig's parrot or Dr. Hamster's pet tortoise? What exactly separates a civilized animal like Peppa from a pet? Do normal pigs exist as well? The more we think about it, the stranger this whole situation becomes. The fun doesn't stop here. There are 2 amazing videos waiting for you on the screen. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.